Welcome to URL, Unzip, Reboot, and Leave, a podcast about the psychology that moves us. Through real conversations with thinkers, doers, and seekers, we explore how we adapt, evolve, and find meaning. So let's unzip, reboot, and leave. How are you, Dr. Madhumita Iyengar? Dr. Younger?
I'm good. Thank you, Gautam. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. And thank you for your time.
I think today we are going to talk about a lot of positivities because currently, socially or sentimentally for multicultural communities in Australia is not everything happening is positive.
We will go deep into that. So, our subject is psychology behind inclusion, psychology behind or how this government mechanism are actually trying to work to have that cohesiveness in the society, where we are missing, where we can, as an immigrant society, where we can do better. So, all these things we will talk to you today. So, as a chair in Canberra Multicultural Community Forum, CMCF, you worked on racism in ACT for CALT, the culturally and linguistically diverse group. Racism means typically black, white, faith background, or whatever, but there are many types of racism you are bringing into the picture. So, what kind of racism we are talking here?
There are two aspects of, if you ask me personally, that I want to talk about today. Racism, what we have, showed the evidence in our report that we recently released on the racism experience of ACTs, or the CALD communities. This is one thing, what the evidence shows, what we have. Another aspect is what the report has not captured. Report means the evidence has not captured. Because when we talk about evidence in this space, um, I would like to draw your attention to the availability of evidence in the public domain. And what I understand that we have just began the journey in gathering evidence, which would be valuable for the multicultural community or the policymakers at large to understand the dimensions that you were talking about. It's not as clear, it's black versus white. There are a lot of intersectionalisms. So this report that we have released recently, that has just started talking about the mainstream, what we know about the racism experiences. We have not even gone to that other layers, the having a deeper drive into those issues. But obviously we need to talk about it, we start conversation. Unless we do the conversation first, that's my experience, unless we do the conversation first, it's difficult to gather the evidence, the hard data, hardcore data. What I would like to talk about first, what's available in the public domain, what we have collected, and then we get into the other aspects, which is still unexplored in terms of evidence.
Because definitely there will be some data which is like hard evidence, which maybe half of them we probably perceive, but there are a lot of contextual or behind the scene things don't come in the mainstream narrative. So yes. So please share some outcomes of that experiment or of
Yeah,
that survey.
definitely. Doesn't sound nice always about complaining. There will be issues, there will be problems. There is no doubts about it. But how we perceive the issues, how we would like to solve those issues, what's the solution? Whether we can do it alone or do it as an individual, do it as a community, do it as a group, do it in collaboration with others. We identify those partners and do it as a collective. So that's what it matters, to identify the solutions. And that's what we try to do. I'll show you. Okay. It's called Racism in ACT from CALD Perspectives, Evidence, Impacts, and Collective Action, based on the findings that we received, the findings from the symposium that we conducted last year on 26th of May 2024. And that was, again, I would show you our partners, ARISE project from ANU, Australian National University. We had ACT Human Rights Commission, University of Canberra Law School, Diversity Council of Australia, and other community organizations. Also Go Equal, a consultancy firm who worked as our facilitator. We presented that symposium where we had more than 70 plus attendees. And we had panel discussions. We had 3 invited speakers. One was, of course, from ANU, one was from the law school, University of Canberra, Professor Kim Rubenstein. She is internationally known. And then we had speaker from Diversity Council of Australia who talked about a different terminology, actually, that they are promoting in all the federal and state level workplaces and the big corporate levels. They are calling it CARM. What we found in the report, I want to show you the striking, is that we had 92% who have experienced racism, either personally or someone very close to them. Could be a family member, could be a close friend, or a colleague at work. And out of that, what I found most striking is that out of this 92%, 51% did not report. I don't claim that there is no evidence in Australia. There are, Western Sydney University, then Scanlon Foundation, they have done, and other states also, the different bodies like human rights commissions and other, they have done some data collection on this racism experience, but mostly those information had been collected on the basis of complaints made to the to different relevant authorities. So when only you find here, we are, and ACT is supposed to be a very advanced state, right? And there only, if you find, people are not reporting. So we can imagine how in the rest of the countries, multicultural community members, they are not reporting. So in the public domain, the evidence you have from different surveys and different reports, these are partial, because they don't capture that half of the people who are going through this kind of experiences. Now, I'd like to share some of the figures here. Here, can you see this? It shows the sites of racism experienced by survey respondents. That's the 72% experienced at workplace, 49% experienced at public space. It could be shops, it could be markets, it could be anywhere, on street, or some community gatherings, anywhere. Could be buses, could be anything, anything which is the public space. 43% experienced in educational institutes, universities and schools.
It is also a huge number.
Yeah, it is. And that too in ACT, where you have the institutes of learnings are very highly reputed internationally. 32% at the government institutions, offices, centers. Again, 32% in the healthcare. It goes on, But the striking is that 72%, as I mentioned to you, at workplaces. Now, if you look at ACT's workplace, ACT is heavily centered on all government offices, federal government, embassies, big corporate houses, their corporate offices. It tells you that all these places where you would expect, because there are all these workplace equities and other kinds of, taking care of their employees, everything is in place in paper. That means they are just tick the box kind of atmosphere. It's not actually followed. Procedures are not followed. Procedures are there, but people don't follow. And it also means that at the end of the day, we are dealing with human, their perceptions, their subjectivities. There could be hundreds of laws and hundreds of methodologies, or there could be system, but unless people follow it, it fails. So this data actually shows you systemic failure. Different levels, we talked about racism incidents reported to authorities. How many people have, out of that 49%, I told you that 51% did not report. Then out of that 49% who have reported, 87% have been dissatisfied with their outcomes. So those 49%, no, we had asked them that if they have reported, to whom they have reported, what kind of, and that's the chart which shows whom they have reported to. Racism incidents reported to authorities by the survey respondents. So as I told you, 49% have reported, right? So we then asked them if they have reported their incidents, whom they have reported to. And the tallest tower shows the which authority they have reported to, most of these reporters. And it was employer. It was their employer. It's I think it's 91%.
Jesus. And that means because it is ACT, typically all the employers are governments. Most of
Most
the
of
case.
them, not all.
Most of them. Hey, yeah,
Most
most
of them.
of them.
Most of them will be government, either state government or federal government. And then there will be also big corporates are there. Aged care services, disability services, primary care. Obviously, others, they have reported to universities, schools, they have reported to even community organizations, reported to anti-racism action bodies like Human Rights Commission, ombudsman. Those people, they have reported to police. And you won't believe, only 8% reported to police.
Yeah, because I
This
mean,
is,
as a for this kind of reason, going to police is also not doesn't come into our perception.
yeah, exactly. Because we coming from uh, in a migrant background, particularly people who are first generation, the kind of countries that we come from, most of us are fearful of police. We don't have that perception that we can go to police. So this is actually lack of knowledge about the services available. That's another striking example, that people just go to their employers, and when they don't see the desired outcome, that nothing has happened, they just don't pursue it. This is also another question we ask, that when you did not, okay, fine, you have reported to your whichever authority you thought it's appropriate, you reported to them, and then you could not get any satisfied outcome out of it. What did you do? Did you pursue? Did you go to some other organizations or authorities or explode it? No. And not only that, I also feel, though we have not asked that questions, that could be deterrent for other people in their circle not to report going forward when those other people, they have experienced themselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
that's that's what I feel from this. That explains why the percentage of non-reporting is so high.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so we understand the problem here, the contextually and like a behind the scene, what things are not happening. What kind of solutions you are thinking, because you are close to the policymakers and you are basically one of your jobs is actually putting all those data in front of them so that they can take a call.
Yeah, that's my professional hazard, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how it is.
Yes, that's a very good question, Gautam. And here, this is what the report shows. You can see here. I'll
Mhm.
read it out for you if you cannot see.
Yeah,
It's
a
that
roadmap for change.
a roadmap for change.
Yes.
And in that symposium, what we did, the symposium had three sections. The first was where we had this invited guest speakers, three guest speakers. They talked about three different aspects of racism. Like, what is the first one talked about? What are the issues? You know, what could be considered as racism, like kind of definition? Because at the end of the day, it's a discrimination. It's a perception based discrimination that people practice out of their perception, the bias. So that's it. But another person talked about the impacts, how it can impact people. And the other person talked about a bit of actions as an organization or at an organization level they are trying to work out. Okay, the existing organizations or the people trying to resolve that. So it gave people, the attendees, a bit of education about this so that they can process their thoughts, they can educate their understandings. So then second activity was that survey that we ran in that which the findings we have reported. So we ran that survey. That was the second activity. Then the third activity was a panel discussions where we had politicians, we had member of parliament, we have members of legislative assembly from all the major three parties, Labour, Liberal, and Greens. Then we had industry representatives, like we had the ACT Human Rights Commissioner. We had three industry representatives. One is from construction, where you can see more of this racist activities happening. People experience more racism. These are the industries we picked up. One is the construction. Another is hospitalities. Third was the students, the university. And the fourth representative was a community representative, and we consciously picked up someone from the African community because this is a perception that people from African communities most backlash. So that was the combination of that panel. So we had a panel discussion. And the last activity was we had invited all the attendees to share their thoughts that about what they think as an individual or as a community. I think I am saying it again and again because um, I just cannot think of any solution which you can do only as a community or only as an individual. So our focus always had been on emphasizing activities from these two aspects. So we had run an activity where people have discussed, they have done the post notes and other kinds of activities to share their thoughts. This is captured, and combining all these, the expert guest speakers are the experts in the field, the experts opinion, their work, their research work, plus the survey responses, plus the panel discussions, and then finally, of course, what people have sort of given mandate or sort of discussed that what they want to see in this space which can work for them to reduce racism in ACT. And based on all these, we have suggested 5 pillars as a going forward. So we identified 5 priority pillars for collective action. The number one is policy reform and enforcement, to get a stronger enforceable and racism laws, accountability systems, and resourcing. Second is education and training, which is basically looking at cultural competency and inclusive curriculum in schools, universities, and workplaces. Third is workplace equity, which gives us the opportunities in terms of transparent hiring. We do call that merit-based employment policy, but actually it doesn't happen always. So more transparent hiring, equal pay, and advancement pathways for CALD individuals. Because people have talked about impacts. I would encourage everybody to read the report because we don't have time to discuss those impacts. There are psychological impacts, there is professional impact, there are other mental health impacts and other kinds of impacts. So please read it and have a look at it. Fourth pillar is community engagement and advocacy, because people did report that they have gone to the communities and they have got some kind of mixed outcomes. But it's not always satisfied. So there is more to do. So there should be more support for grassroots initiatives, anti-racism campaigns, and public awareness. As you know, that there is no public awareness, people don't go to police at all. And foremost, and the last but not the least, of course, the support networks. I cannot emphasize more about the support networks, how it helps people to overcome this kind of negative experiences. So it's peer support, mental health services. I know that you have interest in that, Gautam. So that's very important because all these experiences impact people's mental health very severely. Their self-esteem goes down, and other impacts. So mental health services and safe reporting mechanisms. And this is where I said that there is systemic failure. It's not reporting mechanism is not good enough.
So when I was talking to you other day, you were talking about that there is also a fresh narrative needs to be shared. So
Yes.
a narrative from the Celt community also is not enough.
Yes.
So how like Celt is actually contributing in this Australian society, and how this new fresh narrative you guys are thinking?
Well, I when I talk about narratives, I'm a evidence-based person. That's what I am academically and professionally trained to put forward any argument with evidence. The communities or the larger community, how we are contributing. If you look at all the essential services, some particularly, say, the primary care, whether it's aged care services, disability services, primary health care, or even, as simple as after school care, before school care for our kids, the child care system, you would see most of these people who are work at this, they are migrant. Not only that, if you look at the farming sector during harvest time, they employ people. They get what they call it, I think, temporary workers, and it will be mostly, you will find people coming from Pacific Islands, and there will be students, backpackers coming from other countries. But you will hardly find people from the mainstream workers working in this farming sector.
Hardly you will find any second generation immigrant also. It's
Y-
typically the first generation immigrants over there.
Yeah, yeah. And the temporary workers, right?
Yes.
So if you see that like these are the essential services, and if just imagine a scenario, you don't want any migrants there. Just, don't employ them. What happens? Totally, those industries, they will not be able to provide those services. The system will break down. So this is what I call narrative, that show them that we are, or I would not say we, let me not be personal. We would say these migrants, the migrant communities, if we don't want them, if they are not there, what happens to the economy? What happens to production? So this is the kind of narratives that we have to show them with figures and um, with the dollar impact. For example, Australia's one of the main export item is wine to the world. It is supposed, if I am not wrong, my apologies, I am not across the current statistics. The past statistics, if I believe, it is more than 60% of world's wine production or wine supply goes from Australia. If that is so, and if you are eliminating migrants and the temporary workers who are from the migrant communities from this farming sector, this production will be impacted, and so will be your export earnings. So it will hit your community's productivity straight away.
Okay.
So I don't want to use any economic jargon here, but the bottom line is that it will employ this action. This action will affect your production in one industry, and which will then it will have its ripple effects in other industries, because all these industries, they will be connected to their ancillary, like support services, say transport, say retail industry, say accommodation, everything, it's a chain reaction. The chain reaction will happen, and at the end it will affect people who are not working in the farming sector. That means the mainstream. So I think narrative should be that migrant communities not only helping the Australian economy, they are also indirectly keeping the jobs of the people from the mainstream economies who are working in the services sector. So they are actually creating jobs for the mainstream people. So the narrative, this is what I call the changing in narratives, not only showing what contributions they are making, what the indirect contributions they are making to keep the economy alive and economy progressing. If you think of the aged care sector, it's the health. If you cannot provide services to aged care and disability sector, what will happen to those mainstream people who are subject to, because Australia is an aging society. So we have to think of who will look after our kids when we are able to work. As a mother, I know my two girls, I could work full time in public service because there was school care. After school care, there was before school care. If you don't allow these migrants to work in these sectors, who will look after our kids to make sure that the mainstream women or mainstream men who have small kids, they will be able to work? So think of these practical aspects also.
Next, your engagement as a founder chair in initiatives for women in needs, IWiN. What is the aim of it, and can you please share the initiatives?
I founded it in 2013, April precisely. I'm very proud to say that the IWiN, Initiatives for Women in Need, is the first multicultural women's organization in ACT. And why I started it at the time was basically the focus was narrow at that point. It was to address the domestic violence and gender inequality issues within the South Asian communities, which I observed. I'm very sorry to point out that South Asian communities in ACT or as a whole in Australia, they are highly qualified, and particularly women are, most of them are highly qualified and come from middle class background, professional middle class backgrounds. And I would say probably most of them whom I have, I had contact or I had observed at that point of time, most of them had been actually working or financially well off. So it's not the educational status or the financial status or the social status that had driven to the situation they were going through, but they were still going through domestic violence, and they were pushing it under the carpet because they did not want to discuss it. A social shame, it was a taboo, and quite often, actually, domestic violence, the definition of or the perception of domestic violence within that community or within those people who were going through, it was not very clear. I could see that, only when a person is beaten, or physically abused, it was considered as domestic violence. But that's not what domestic violence is. There are other forms of domestic violence. You have financial abuse, you have social abuse.
Psychological
Yeah,
abuse.
psychological, of course. But those are the constraints. You would see that women, they will come and say very proudly, oh, my husband is so loving. I know he doesn't like me wear this color. He doesn't like me doing this, or he doesn't like me something. So everything is centered around what my husband likes.
Well,
Uh,
this is more or less the patriarchal angle.
yeah,
Like,
patriarchal. More than that, why I'm calling it domestic violence, why I'm calling it is not love, the way the women, the perception. And I said, okay, fine, your husband likes it and you're very much in love with husband, that's fine. What about you? I want to wear black, but my husband doesn't like it. That's why I wear it. How does it matter? You Then why don't you talk to your husband that you don't like to do that, and just sort it out? No, then he will be very angry. And I have seen men in front of me, treating their wives like a doormat, and they endure it because they said, oh, yeah, husband has a right. Husband giving, particularly in the North Indian community. By the way, I studied in Delhi and lived in Delhi for a long time. So husband giving one, thapper, kind of thing, just a slap, throwing teacups, hot teacups at you, or throwing the shoes at you, all these things, it's normal. And not only husbands, actually other people also I have seen, even their mother-in-law or sister-in-law, somebody doing that. So it's not always husband. Trying to tell is that definition, that what could be considered as domestic violence. And the second thing is that this is not your home country where you don't have support services. There are actually different organizations, different programs to support you, to make you aware you about your rights as a woman. Those things were not available, those information were not available to these women. I wanted to raise that awareness, and I happened to be part of quite a few community boards at the time. And I talked to them and I said, we need to do this. We need to start doing something about raising those awareness in the community for the benefits of this, the women and their families. Or even so, with the second generation, sometimes parents have been abusive with their kids. For example, honor killing, forced marriages, or forcing their kids to do certain things they don't want to do. So all these things, I think, as a community organization, we should start working on that. All of them have declined. They said, no, that's not our job. Let's not go in there because it's their personal problems. And I just never could understand. And if you have a community organization, moral responsibility lies with you, the board. I had no other option, and I would give the credit to my husband for that. Um, he told me, if you are so unhappy, if you want to do something, and if you are not getting support, um, then why do you seek support from the organizations who don't want to support you? You should do something yourself. Whenever we do any IWiN events, he is there to support me. Almost 3 years, it was him who actually supported me financially to organize events. After that, I started applying for community grants, different government and other type of corporate grants, and got it, and have been able to deliver quite a few innovative projects. I have a very strong team with me, and I have got very good collaborators. So other community organizations, even ACT government, federal government grant, they have been a constant support for IWiN. So as a collective, we could deliver uh, quite a few very impactful projects, community projects. And as a result, in 2021, IWiN was the winner of ACT government's Multicultural Champion of the Year award. And the next year also, because in 2021, 22, we had delivered a pilot project on a social enterprise project for women coming from multicultural community backgrounds. And for that, and we called it Her Kitchen Table. It was a small pilot project supported by federal government grant. And we actually we supported, trained them, and created women who wanted to run their own catering businesses. So that Her Kitchen Table got the 2022 ACT Multicultural Champion award. Our work has been recognized. The award was actually given for our work in the domestic violence, impactful work in the domestic violence space. Now we are moving more into leadership and creating economic opportunities for women. Recently, this year, we had delivered our it is a culturally tailored leadership program for women. We called it Netri. In Netri in Sanskrit, which means woman leader. So that was a 3 months long, very intensive course for women. And it ran from March to May. We had actually screened. We got about 30 plus applications, but we screened 16 women, CALD women again, and they came from different countries, South Asia, like India, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Latin America, Africa, Europe, Eastern Europe. So different countries. All of them had master's degrees, and we had around 4 PhD degrees. So more than half are working actually. So we ran on Saturdays those activities, the workshops. So on 20th September, we did the graduation of this inaugural group in National Portrait Gallery. And again, here also, we got support from a local, very big business, Sage Advice. They supported us. And SAFACT, which is South Asian Federation of ACT, that's a community organization. They supported us mainly. But we also got support from the political level. Who is the assistant treasurer now, Honorable Dr. Andrew Lai, MP. He was there to release our evaluation report, because we not only ran the program, we also did evaluation while we were running the program. I'm very proud to say that, you know what he called Netri? He said Netri is not a program, it's a philosophy and it's a movement. Now, I've already started getting interest for the next year's Netris. Canberra City News, they had covered the event and published it in their Women in Business 2025 edition, which was published on 25th of September. And our ACT Minister for Women, Dr. Marissa Patterson, she was also present, and she launched our next social enterprise project. That's not a pilot anymore. We call it Orange Skirt Social Enterprise Project. And why orange? Is that orange is the color of freedom. As an organization, IWiN had been observing Orange Day since 2014 annually. So do you know what is Orange Day, Gautam?
No.
Okay. Orange Day is an initiative of United Nations. United Nations have identified 16 days of activism each year from 25th November to 10th of December, 16 days of activism as Orange Day period. Why? Because 25th of November is officially, it is called International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. And orange is the color of that freedom. Freedom from all these kind of atrocities, freedom from violence, freedom from anything to do with reducing or harming the well-being of women and girls. Campaign says, say no to violence against women and girls. So it's an UN initiative. And what they do, that these 16 days, and it ends with 10th of December, which is the International Human Rights Day. So what the UN encourages or promotes is that these 16 days to run some event. It could be an afternoon tea, morning tea, event, symposium, movie, whatever you want to do, where you can bring a group of your target community together and you talk about this. So we are observing it since 2014. Every year, we try to run a community event to raise awareness on these issues through different kinds of activities. Every year, we actually do a symposium where we do a panel discussion and then we do a community activity together. Say for last year, we did the panel discussion on mental health impacts of domestic violence. We had a mandala art activity.
What you were saying is definitely there are a lot of things from administration side. There are a lot of things also needs to be done from the individual community side also. And these communities are also mixing with each other. And many times I have seen that we have, what is the right word, lack of intolerance maybe towards the other community or other race within the Celt community I'm talking about. So, how is your experience, or how the future you are working towards this awareness of this intersectionality and the race mixing?
Yes, this is a very, very important question, because when we started discussion, I was telling you that our report talks about certain things which we have found from that survey responses. There are certain issues are still not being explored as an evidence. This is one of these issues which needs to be worked on, which needs to be discussed with the community, and evidence must be gathered to identify the nature of these intersectionalities. Members or community members or people's perception about their experience on intersectionalities. We need to gather information on people's the Cal community's experience on this specific aspect. Australian Human Rights Commission's report they released last year in October. It's called National Anti-Racism Framework. At the FECA conference, there they have interviewed around 1,200 members from the multicultural communities all over Australia. I actually asked the questions to the Commissioner Giridharan that why there is no discussion or no perspectives from the multicultural communities on this very particular issue, because this is a reality, everybody experiences it, but there is no data on that. But what you also encouraged me is that as a community, you are free to work on that. Here, this year's Orange Day Symposium, we will be focusing on this particular aspect, the experience, but that will be probably more from women perspective, but that's the beginning. So we are currently preparing a survey to collect that kind of information, that what
That means within the Celt community, how women are experiencing from the other communities.
yes, and other, not only women, I mean, women actually face multiple layers of discrimination compared to their male counterparts, right?
Agree.
That you agree with, isn't
Agree.
it? And so racism also, women, when they experience multiple layers. So that is one aspect we have not covered in our symposium that we did last year in May as a CMCF symposium. So this is what we want to do as IWiN. Okay. Now, when we want to do it as IWiN, I want not only the women's perspective, I also want to bring these intersectionalities, which was not again discussed, or we did not have the scope to discuss in our earlier symposium, or additional racism experience as women, plus the intersectionalities within the multicultural communities they experience. Because I feel there are evidence, but this is not the hardcore evidence. Again, that's what people talk about. Everybody discusses that it's not only racism, it's not just black and white, black versus purple, purple versus yellow, yellow versus brown, just name it.
And if you get the data, it will be also a very shocking kind of a data for sure.
Yeah. And also another aspect is that we feel that, when I was telling you about these narratives to be changed from our cult perspectives, uh, this is also another responsibility that we have. We have to acknowledge these intersectionalities within us, because quite often mainstream people, they don't understand these intersectionalities. Even I think even we don't understand these intersectionalities at times. We come from our countries with, and we bring our baggages here. We cannot totally get rid of those baggages, those bias. That could be religious bias, cultural bias, language bias, um, you name it, different layers of bias. And we practice that through discrimination. So we also have to acknowledge that we have to resolve that issues. I personally don't think we can totally eliminate it, because as human beings, we are all subjectives. But knowledge actually gives us the power to control our emotions, because quite often we do it unconsciously. So that consciousness can come when we work and we discuss it with the community through dialogues, through working together, through collective actions. We can address to a good extent. So I think the willingness to work together, willingness to acknowledge, willingness to accept our responsibilities, which is called social accountability. As long as we can do that and we have that willingness to do it, we can address these racism issues, because racism is not just an incident. It's the product of people's perceptions, the upbringings, the surroundings or the environment they are in. So it has multiple dimensions. So I think the time has come that we start identifying, we start discussing, we start being open about our collective responsibilities as well as individual responsibilities to address. And then only we will be effectively addressing the racism issues or discrimination. And we will be able to integrate with the mainstream community properly and create a very positive narrative so that we can contribute to the, if you consider it as the social fabric of the Australian community. Because at the end of the day, we have called it our home on our own. Nobody has forced us to come here.
Okay.
So it is our responsibility to make our home beautiful, live happily. Just let us be happy.
So on that, hopefully all our societal resilience and reform will come with our collective effort, and hopefully we will leave a better, happier world for our next generation. Thank you, Dr. Iyengar. Thank you, Madhumita Di, for your time.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about. I don't know how politically correct I was, but I was being very honest with you.
Thank you for your time.